So I completed my internship at St. Vincent's Hospital. My name is Cole Plyman. I'm a senior here at Jonathan Law High School. I'll be attending St. Olaf College in the fall. I plan on majoring in biology with a concentration in pre-medical studies, and I'll also be a part of the varsity baseball team at St. Olaf. Like I said before, I interned at St. Vincent's Hospital in Bridgeport, and we also had an office in Trumbull, which, if you want the exact, it's 115 Technology Drive in Trumbull, where we saw patients in the office, schedule them for the OR, and also saw post-ops. My site supervisor was Dr. Genova. She is a general surgeon at St. Vincent's Hospital, and she is amazing. I chose this site because I would like to pursue my dream of becoming a physician. This site truly gave me the inside look at what it's truly like to be a doctor and what it is to be in the field of medicine. And my mom also works with Dr. Genova. She's a surgical PA, and so they worked one-on-one with their clients and in the surgery. And so she helped me connect with different surgeons at St. Vincent's. I got to see a couple of general surgeons, trauma surgeon, and an oncologist. What is a business? St. Vincent's is a hospital located in Bridgeport, Connecticut. St. Vincent's is associated with Hartford Healthcare, and they own 7 hospitals throughout the state of Connecticut. What were my expectations? My expectations were to spectate surgeries, learn the anatomy of the body, medical terminology, and surgical techniques. I really wanted to see what it truly was like to be a surgeon and work in the medical field and see if it's truly something that I want to pursue, because it's a stressful job. What were my responsibilities? I had to show up on time every morning, and we usually started anywhere from 5 in the morning to 7. So it started pretty early, and I had to get up around 4 to 4:30 sometimes, and we went as long as 5 in the afternoon. Especially with the trauma, their shifts, they work shifts in the hospital, either 5 in the morning till 5 at night, or 5 at night till 5 in the morning. And I did not go overnight. I would not be able to handle that. But I also had to answer the questions the surgeon asks me. So basically, during the surgeries, she would quiz me on the anatomy, what we're looking at, what we're doing, our patient history, and I would have to be prepared to answer those questions. So I'd have to do research about the patient, look at the CAT scans, make sure I'm up to date with the information on the individual patient during the day. I also had to learn surgical etiquette, which is actually very complicated. It's very stressful, even just standing there in the OR room, because there's lots of things that you can't touch, and if you touch them, they have to reset the whole room, and you set back the whole day by 45 minutes to an hour just of them resetting the room, because a lot of things are sterile, and if you touch the sterile equipment, they have to reset everything. I also created many presentations throughout the internship. I did research papers and research topics, expanding my knowledge on the general surgical area. So for example, I did a presentation on the gallbladder and diverticulitis and colon issues. It was a very in-depth internship, as you can tell, and the surgeon, Dr. Genova, tested and quizzed me throughout the internship on all sorts of topics. Accomplishments. I learned a ton of information regarding surgery. I learned the anatomy of the abdomen, the bowel, and how certain organs function. I learned certain symptoms and what they can mean for the patient and how to diagnose them in the office. I learned how to read CT scans and, as I said before, surgical etiquette. So I loved this internship. Being a surgeon, I learned that being a surgeon is a major commitment. It's stressful. You have to live with the decisions you make in the OR, and it takes up basically your whole life. You have no free time. The surgeries that I saw, I kept track actually. I saw 13 cholecystectomies, 15 hernia repairs, anywhere from ventral to umbilical, incisional. I saw 2 sleeve gastrectomies, a thyroidectomy, and 2 component separation hernia repairs. I also met over 45 patients in the office, post-op and pre-operative. I learned how to read CT scans, like I said before, and diagnose certain things off these scans, such as hernias, gallstones, and diverticulitis. I'll show an example later in the presentation. And these are the surgeons, as a big thank you to, that I got to spectate in the OR. Dr. Genova, like I said, she's the main surgeon that I got to see. I trailed her most of the days throughout the week. I also got to watch Dr. Calendar. She's a general surgeon and oncologist. Dr. Flock, a general surgeon and a bariatric surgeon. And Dr. Katile, she's a trauma surgeon. So some surgeries, I'm only going to go through a couple, I don't want to bore you guys to death, but some surgeries I got to see, one of them was a cholecystectomy. And the cholecyst is the medical term for the gallbladder, and anytime you see ectomy after a medical term, it means the removal of. So it can be a sigmoidectomy, a colectomy, appendectomy, but in this case, it's a cholecystectomy. So, like I said, the cholecystectomy means the removal of the gallbladder. Now, the anatomy and issues. So the gallbladder sits right under the liver, right here, and it stores bile produced by the liver. Bile helps break down the fats in our small intestine, and when fatty foods are present, the gallbladder will contract and release bile through this. They call this a cystic duct. This is the common duct. It releases bile through the cystic duct into your duodenum, which is the first part of your small intestine, to help break down those fatty foods that we have trouble breaking down. Now, cholelithiasis is the medical term for gallbladder stones. Now, the symptoms that patients have of gallbladder stones are upper right pain, and sometimes it can shoot all the way to under your right shoulder blade. And nausea and vomiting are also common with gallbladder stones. And also there's pain. Pain gets more intense when you eat fatty foods, which is a good indicator of gallbladder stones, because if you think about it, when there's stones in your gallbladder contracts to release the bile to help break down the fatty foods, and there's stones blocking the duct, it hurts. It hurts when there's stones blocking the bile. And then the bile gets backed up, and then they form more stones. Now, the choledocholithiasis is also gallbladder stones, but that is when a stone is actually released through the cystic duct and gets lodged in this common bile duct, which is actually a very serious complication. It can cause jaundice. Now, you guys have probably heard of jaundice. It's often associated with liver failure. And why does this happen, you may be asking? It is caused by a buildup of what's called bilirubin. And bilirubin is produced naturally in your liver when breaking down red blood cells. Sorry, that's a mouthful. So, and it's a yellow substance. Usually it's just released right out the common bile duct, but as you can tell, when you have a stone blocking duct, it gets all backed up, and then it's released into your skin and eyes, the bilirubin. So that's the yellowing of your skin and your eyes. And it's very serious because when you block the common bile duct, the whole hepatic system gets backed up, and you can become septic, and it can be a very dangerous situation for the patient. Let's see. This is a gallbladder that we removed. This is horrible, actually. As you can see, these are all the gallbladder stones. It usually isn't this bad, but it's full of gallbladder stones. I took this picture actually the other day. And even you can see down here, there's more gallbladder stones. Now, there's two different colors of, I know, it's pretty crazy. There's two different colors of gallbladder stones. The dark stones that you see here, which are more processed of bilirubin, and then there's yellow stones, which is more cholesterol-based. Now, this is the other popular surgery that I saw, which is hernia repairs. Now, there's many types of hernias: umbilical, ventral, groin hernias, which they call direct hernias. And fun fact, actually, if you have an outie belly button, that means you have a small umbilical hernia. A little piece of fat or something, intestine, is poking through your umbilical cord, because there's a natural weakness there from when you're born. A hernia is a weakness or hole, usually most commonly in the abdomen or the abdominal wall, where fat or intestine can bulge and push through, sometimes getting stuck. And the surgeon that I watched, Dr. Genova, repairs these with mesh robotically. Now, this is the robot she uses. And a lot of patients, they see this and they get really scared. And assumably so, it looks alien-like, but they're like, is it AI intelligence? No, she sits on another console. She looks in like VR and does the surgery, and it's minimally invasive. It's even better than laparoscopic surgery because the the phrase that I'll use is laparoscopic surgery is like inserting chopsticks into the patient. You don't have much wiggle room. These, you have 4 ports. It's minimally invasive. You make like 3 centimeter, 5 centimeter, and 8 centimeter. And you insert these instruments, and they have more rotation than a human wrist. They have 8 to 9 different tools that you can use, cauterizing, and it is much less minimally invasive than other surgery, open surgery, and even laparoscopic surgery. Now, this is a CT scan of a hernia. So if you can imagine, I know it's hard, a patient laying on their back like this. This is their spine. These are their intestines. This is the abdominal wall, and this is the fat on the top. So they're laying on their back like this. This is the abdominal wall. These are the rectus muscles, so your six-pack muscles. As you can see, as you get older, your rectus muscles start fading away from each other, and then you get this weakness right here. As you can see, this white stuff is your intestine, and you can see it's poking through into the hernia. They call it the hernia sac. So this, the abdominal wall, it's going, and then it stops. And then you see the hernia sac, and it keeps going, and you can see their intestines are poking through. So this is a major hernia, and this is something that needs to be fixed. This is one of our patients with a massive hernia. So this patient, as you can see, had an incision right here. So this hernia filled up the incision. So he had an emergency surgery, I'll get to that later, from a motorcycle accident, but it really looks like an alien. This big incision across his abdomen, and this is all intestine and fat that filled up his stomach through that weakness of that emergency surgery that didn't heal right. So now this is repairing a hernia, step by step. So this is what she sees when she goes into the console, the surgeon, Dr. Genova. She's looking up at the abdominal wall. The patient's on their back, so they're laying like this. They inflate the abdomen with CO2 because you can't inflate it with oxygen because it's flammable. And this is the little hole. This is a different patient. It's smaller. This is a little hole right here. This is the hernia, and this is some fat and intestine poking through. So she goes in with her tools, and as you can see, these are her little tools. She pulls out what's in the sac. She starts to suture it up, sutures it closed, and then she's going to place a mesh on top and suture the mesh. Now the mesh is also rough on the outside, so it can create scar tissue so that the mesh doesn't move in future years. So it's very well integrated into your body after the surgery. Now this is the before of the patient I just showed you, and the after. And it's actually so life-changing how big these surgeries are. I just want to share this man's story. So I got to see both before and after of this patient and how impactful these hernia surgeries can truly be. This patient had an emergency surgery, like I said before, from a motorcycle accident to save his life, and that's what this incision right here was from, and the hernia took up the space of the incision. And he would not take off his shirt in front of any loved ones, even his wife. He'd sleep with his shirt on. He was so embarrassed of this massive alien-like structure on him that he was depressed, embarrassed, and the first visit after the surgery, we walked into the room, and he was crying with tears of how happy he was. And I asked Dr. Genova about it, and she goes, "This is why I do it." So that made me want to pursue this as well. It just helping people, make their lives better. It's life-changing what they can do. Now this is some of the staff that I worked with. This is Dr. Genova, my mother, who's a surgical PA, and this is one of the nurses. This is, I know it's hard to see, there's a better picture on the next slide, but this is the robot behind her. And this was actually last week they completed their 1,500th case with the robot together, which is a great milestone for them. This is all the general surgical staff and nurses, PAs. So they're awesome people. I love them so much. Again, another picture of the robot right here, as you can see. Usually there's a patient right here. This is my mom and Dr. Genova, again. And my growth from the internship, I learned all about surgery, like you saw, from diagnosing patients to watching surgeries and looking at CT scans. And I really got to see what it is like to be a surgeon. It's very busy, and there's basically no time to spare. I built long-lasting relationships for my future, recommendations for med school, which is super important. Very reputable surgeons are going to be writing my recommendations now because I've built these connections that are going to last a lifetime. I had more internship opportunities with Dr. Genova, if I would please, and I can work with her over the summer if I want. And I'm able to, like I said, I can able to keep interning over the summer. My future plans. I definitely want to pursue the pre-med track after seeing what I saw for the last couple of weeks. Like I said before, I'm majoring in biology with a pre-medical concentration, so I'm already on the right track. And I'm planning on applying for medical school after completing college. And as of right now, what I saw is the best for me is the anesthesiologist route, but you never know. There's a lot of different paths to go. And that's, any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Just so impressive. Like, what an amazing opportunity to
Yeah.
have, and just I'm super impressed. But I wanted to kind of touch back on some of like the patient relationship stuff,
Yeah.
and just you telling that last story, because we were reading your journal entries.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it was probably your first or your second journal
Yep.
entry talking about an in-office visit you had.
Yes.
I wonder if you could tell that story. Of
Yeah.
that moment.
So I remember this old grandmother came in with her daughter. Her daughter was wheeling her in with a wheelchair. And she came in, and my mom was like, yeah, she has dementia. She's really old. She has little to no brain function. Well, she has brain function, but she's inaudible. She can't speak. And we go in. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. So I go in, and I meet this lovely old young lady. And the whole time she's looking at me through this visit. And her visit was nothing special. It was just like a little abscess. But the whole time she was looking at me. And halfway through, she starts like making like hand gestures toward me, and the young lady with her said that her hand gestures, that means that she wants you to come sit next to her. So I sat next to her, and she grabbed my hand and put it on her lap and held her hand right next to my face for the whole rest of the appointment. And the daughter said she's never seen anything like it, and she thinks that you remind her of one of her 8 children that she birthed. And I was so like upset after that. It was so sad because she must have been having like a flashback or something of her children, and she said they had blonde children just like me, and I looked almost like their children that she had. And it just made me feel so bad for the family and for her as well. And she came in. The saddest part was old dementia patients, to help soothe them, they give them little baby dolls. So she cradled this little baby doll, like an American Girl doll, around the whole time. And when she saw me, she put it down and grabbed my hand. So I must have replaced that feeling. But yes, it was very sad. It was very sad.
I just want to like mention that obviously like you had that patient interaction, then you also got
Yeah.
to see the surgical side, and I think that's such a beautiful combination of
It
things
is.
you have experienced.
It puts a name to the patient on the OR table. It's like you get to know them before, through the surgery, and after to see how they're doing.
Exactly.
It was really special.
And I'm just so impressed with the amount of knowledge you gained in this.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen another medical internship
Yeah,
that
it was-
probably taught you as much as this
I
one
mean,
did.
they put me to work, I'll tell you that. I mean, I thank them very much for it. Like I said, I think I did almost 100 hours with them, even though I was only required to do 70 to 75, but I loved every moment. I was so intrigued. They did a great job of teaching me. They gave me all these topics to study. So what they did was they gave me these topics, and then I'd present them in the OR to the surgeon while she was doing the surgery. She'd quiz me on like that screen you saw. She'd point to an organ. What is this? What is a function? She'd quiz me on all these things, and if I didn't know it, she'd make me look it up and tell her right after.
That's great.
So it was really cool.
Good preparation.
It-
right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I have a couple questions, but my first is medical. The picture of all of those gallbladder stones.
Yes.
Are we supposed to have none in our gallbladder?
So honestly, a lot of people get gallbladder stones throughout their life. They just don't know. Some people,
Are they like calcified?
yeah. So over time, depending on your diet, they can calcify, harden. The bile hardens. That's what it is. The bile hardens down into little stones. Most people don't even notice them. Like 80 to 90% of people don't notice the pain or even that you have gallbladder stones. They go in for CT scans and they look at the CT scan for some other issue like an appendectomy, appendicitis, and they're like, oh, you have gallbladder stones. They didn't even know. Usually most people won't even know, but the pain is the stones getting to the cystic duct entrance and blocking the bile from being secreted from the gallbladder. So yes, a lot of people get gallbladder stones, especially with the American diet, but you usually don't know unless it gets to that point. You'll know if you have those. It's very rare to have that extreme case Choledothysis, yeah.
That was intense.
That was very intense.
It was like a jump scare.
Yeah, that was great. And then I guess my just other kind of like more basic question is now like that you did this internship and you're done, what do you think is gonna be like the most important thing you take with you as you go off to college and then eventually like your medical school?
I think that the experience, that me knowing that I can handle that type of gore is very important, because I was talking to Dr. Genova. She said that during her medical school, she'd have people first time seeing an organ, and she had 3 to 4 students in medical school pass out on the floor out of like 20 kids. So knowing that I have that mentality and that I can handle that type of gore is important, and I've seen a ton of surgeries already, probably more surgeries than a lot of med students have, and knowing that I have that confidence and I can understand what's going on in these surgeries and comprehend, and yeah, I think it's really important for my future.
Confidence, right?
Yeah, it gives me a lot of confidence, yeah. Especially as a high school, I go into these OR rooms, they're like, oh, are you a med student? I'm like, no, I'm a high school student, because we have a lot of med school residents from Quinnipiac. St. Vincent's de Quinnipiac, they send their med students there. So I even got to talk to a lot of the med students in the OR about their experience with med school. And it's kind of funny because at the end I was answering more than what the med students were. I was answering the questions from the surgeon that the med students couldn't answer. But yes, it was kind of funny, but it was a lot of fun.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations on all
Thank
the
you.
medical
Thank you.